Well, welcome to the second episode of the Adapt Digital Solutions podcast. I am here with Valerie and Dino, and we are not professional podcasters. We are marketers who manage marketing for around 150 small businesses in the United States. And so don't expect a ton of organization or high production value. We are literally here just to have some fun, talk about marketing, tell some stories about our clients. That's the theme for today. Is we're going to be telling some stories, some wins, some failures, just stories of our experience in the trenches. And Valerie is going to play the part of the skeptical business owner that thinks all marketers are full of
Yep.
BS and that all of this is fugazi. Quickly, a little bit of background. So, I started Adapt Digital Solutions about 8 years ago and have been doing marketing ever since. Dino came on board around 5 years ago. And I think at this point, he's probably managed about as many marketing projects as I have. Combined, we've probably managed 400, 500 different projects at one time. And Valerie, you've been with us for 2 years now?
No, more than three.
Over three.
Yeah.
Gosh, time really flies. So Valerie's been with us for 3 years. She's now our general manager. She started in sales, and so she has heard just about every story there is out there of, you know, contractors and business owners that are trying to figure out their marketing, have been burned, trying to find an actual good team to work with. And so that's who we are. And we're just going to have a conversation. If you're a business owner, a contractor, you're interested in marketing, interested in growing your business, then some of these stories will probably be pretty interesting to you. Or if you're a marketer yourself and you want to hear actual real stories of people in the trenches, like this might be your podcast. So we hope you enjoy. So I'll kick it off and I'm going to tell the story of our friend Lundy. So Aaron Lundy is the owner of Lundy's Landscaping. He came to us originally, I think, in 2021. So that was about 4 years ago. That was a little bit before your time, Val. And he came in super skeptical. I think he had worked with a marketing company before. He had a website, and we were referred to him by another client, and so that was the only reason he was talking to us. But he thought everything I was saying was BS. And his business was, he's a landscaper, but his business at the time was Lundy's Lawn Care. And his whole business model was, hey, I'm going to get people in the door and sell them like, regular lawn care services, subscription lawn care. And then we'll upsell them to different landscaping services like retaining walls, landscape design, planting shrubs, whatever. And he had done pretty well. I think he was doing about 400,000 a year back then, and it was all on lawn care. And he came to us wanting to get the other kinds of projects. His whole business model of like trying to upsell wasn't really working out. So he came in, we took him through our normal like, kind of like consulting process of like, hey, what are your goals? Where are you at now? Where do you want to be in a year and 3 years? Why do you think now's the right time? Like all those kinds of things. And I bring that up because he was like super impressed by that. I remember him telling me like, nobody's ever asked me these questions before. Like I'm thinking about my business in a whole new light. Before that, he was just, grinding it out. Like get a client, go mow their lawn, try to hire somebody to help him and really like nose down in the work. But after that, he started looking at his business from the outside and imagining what it could be like in the future. So we provided what we call the foundational marketing system. So we built him a new website. He was already on Google Maps, but we optimized his listing so that it was possible for him to show up for something besides lawn care. We coached him on getting reviews, and we did some search engine optimization. All of that is what we call the foundational marketing system, because 90% of the time, if you don't have that stuff set up properly, then you're going to waste your time and your money doing anything else. So we got him going with that. And there's a video on my YouTube channel. You can listen to him tell the story himself, but we launched his website and immediately he started getting a ton of calls, like a ton of new leads. And these leads were were for the type of projects that he had never even bid before. And what was it? He sent me a
69
message. Like
estimates.
he tells the story. Yeah. 69 estimates in the 22 days after we launched his website, which before that in 22 days, he probably would have done like 5, maybe 10 max. And it would have all been for lawn care. But what happened was he was already somewhat established in his area, and he wasn't in a typically, or like a generally, what am I trying to say? Competitive market, like it's pretty low competition area. So when we built him a proper website that had pages for all the different services he wanted, landscaping, tree services, retaining walls, hardscaping, patios, all that kind of stuff, immediately he started popping up for searches for all these other things that people were already searching for. They were already searching. He just wasn't showing. Now he was showing, and now he was on top of the list. And so literally overnight, he just got flooded with these leads. I don't even know how many leads he got, but he did 69 estimates in 22 days. And he sent me pictures of his calendar, and it was just stacked. And he was floored. He was absolutely thrilled. And he actually had to hire an estimator like a month later because he couldn't handle all of that stuff. And that was one of the most extreme cases of like overnight success I'd ever seen. And still to this day, like I've seen a couple examples like that, but his might be like the fastest and most extreme. But that year he went from like 400,000. I think he ended the year over $1 million. It was like 1.1 million, 1.2, something like that. And it's been like that for him ever since. That was 2021. We're in 2025 now. And at this point, he was getting so many like tree service business that he spun off another company that just does tree services. And I think combined, what was it? He's doing like around 2.5 million last year. And so, and most of that time, he didn't do any advertising. Like it was all organic, Google Maps, website, and he's just been sprinting ever since then. So, we got him into advertising now, and we're helping him expand further. But that was one of the coolest stories, and him and I are friends now, obviously. And every time I talk to him, it's really cool to hear, like how our services changed his life, his employees. They put food on a lot of tables, and we played a part in that. And I'm really proud of that.
Absolutely. Like whenever I talk to him, he always tells me hiring us was one of the best 3 decisions he made in his life. And it's just so nice to hear. But one of the things that I would add to what you said is like Lundy, as a business owner and as a guy, he's just relentless. Like whatever you ask him to do, he's gonna do it. That's what played a huge part in his success as well, because we didn't have to wait 6 months for him to send us photos or for him to get reviews or like answer the questions we had about his business. He just got us some of these things even the same day. So that's what he did, from his side, that made the whole project super successful.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good thing to point out. He was, I think, a former football player, but once he signed up and was going with it, he looked at us like his coach. Mm-hmm. And everything we said, he just did it immediately, got us everything we needed. I remember when we asked him to send us video recording of him explaining all of his services as if he was explaining them to a client, and he sat his phone down in his lap. And so we had this view coming up from his lap on the bottom of his face, like an hour of him talking. You remember that?
Yeah, that was cool. But like he got us the info. That's what matters the most. He got it. He did it. He didn't think much about it. He just wanted to get it done. That's one of the things I appreciate about him.
Yeah, I remember actually I came in when London just took off. And I remember his shock. He's like, "Oh my god, no, what?" Because it was, you can't, you it's like a, I always say it's like a, fishing. It's like a competitive fishing. You never
Mm.
know how much leads will you get,
Mm.
right? So I remember his shock when it was a lot.
Mm.
And my question is, you mentioned, Chuck, that Lonnie was surprised about the questions that you asked him. I
Mhm.
do think that any contractor would need to hear them and ask them to themselves. Could you get a little bit deeper into that, please?
Yeah, let me see if I can actually pull up that worksheet that we used to
Mm.
use.
Because ultimately, it's really something that anybody needs to ask themselves about their business. And it's what I see, it's obvious questions. Like, for example, do you know your numbers? What's your revenue? uh, what
Hmm.
is your cost of per job, and so on. And that is really something that you need to know. You need to know your numbers. You need to know how much you spend on the job, how much it costs for you, your labor, and so on.
Mm. Yeah, it's super important to know that. Like, I talked to a lot of people, and here's one funny story from one of our clients. Like, he's doing awesome now, but he's a plumber, and the first time I talked to him, and when I asked him about the services that he likes to do the most, like, he didn't know. He's like, I don't know. Like, I asked him about other services he does. He's like, well, I'm not sure. I'm like, well, what do people call you for? And he didn't know. So at first, it was really difficult to talk to that client, but then he came around and like was able to answer all the questions we had for him. But yeah, like, just reflecting on your business, super important. Like, knowing the numbers, what's the most profitable, what kind of jobs, just those sorts of things to get started with that.
And
Yeah, so I pulled up the actual questionnaire that we asked him. And so just to go through it, like, first thing we do is what kind of things do you do? What are the product services that you offer? And then we asked for like 5 different goals. Like, what are your goals for this project? And his answers are improve outreach to the community, become more visible, improve thumbprint on the internet, bring better understanding to what we do, and then improve overall website. So a little bit vague on the last one, but he was looking to improve communications. We asked, is there anything about your current website that serves the business well? He says it looks professional, but on the negative side, that it lacks some depth. Um, we asked him things like, who do you want to manage all of this stuff? Is the content prepared? But I think what really sparked his imagination is we started asking him things like, tell us about your ideal customer. Who are they? How old are they? What gender are they? Where do they hang out online? What are their interests? And he started just thinking through all of his clients and trying to identify, like, what are the ones who are my favorite? Who are the easiest to work with? And starting to define what, like, who that is. Like, who do we want? What customers do we want more of? And therefore, like, you can also identify what customers do you want less of. We asked for what's the top 5 reasons that they're going to be looking at your website. We asked him for some other website examples. We asked him to tell us about his competitors. What are they doing? What do you think they're doing well? What are they not doing well? How many leads that he want to get a month? So he said 50 to 60. Back then, we didn't ask the same exact questions we ask now. Now we always ask, like, what was your revenue last year? How many customers or how many projects did you do? There, with those 2 numbers, we can figure out what the size of their average project is. We ask them, like, how many leads do you get per month, or did you get last year? Like, any kind of number. And then with that number, we can know how many leads it takes to close a deal. And because we've worked with so many companies, especially contractors and home services companies, with just those numbers, we can tell a lot about the business and what kind of marketing is going to work right for them. For example, if a company like Lundy back then, he was doing, I think, around 400,000 a year revenue. So a company like that, if he has any kind of decent profit margin, he's got some disposable income to invest in marketing. But if he had said he's doing 100,000 in revenue, he's probably just scraping by, and he's not going to be able to invest a ton. So advertising's off the table, and just little things like that. Sometimes I run into, because we also ask about like their profit margins, and if a company has really bad profit margins, then we have to talk about that first, because doing more of something that you're losing money on is a bad thing. And so if somebody comes in, and this happens all the time, especially with contractors, home services guys, because they come out of the trades, they never were trained in business and numbers and stuff. They come in and they're not making money, they're not making enough, and they're like, I want to do more of this. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, are you sure about that? The numbers say otherwise. So anyway, just Lundy, and he had to talk to his wife a lot about all these answers and getting her buy-in on this. He was super skeptical. I think he says in that video on YouTube that him and his wife were super skeptical about this, but they got to know us, they trusted us enough to get started, and then as soon as his website launched, within a couple of days, he was like 1,000% sold. Super glad he did it.
Yeah, that's to address this. So, guys, dear future clients of ours, when you see a questionnaire from us, when you try to reach us through the website or otherwise, and you see that questionnaire from us, please take your time and fill it in. It's very crucial thing for you and for us to understand where you're at in your business, to bring some clarity in, to make our conversation more meaningful and deeper. And that's made for you to understand where you're at, and for us to understand where you're at and what's the best way we could help you.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, because like when you go, you find a marketer, you go to their website, you see a form, you're filling it out, like you're not thinking much of it. But if you look at like Lundy's case, that filling out that questionnaire and going through that process was the most important thing he's probably done. Well, I can't say the most important thing, but one of the top 5 important things he's done this decade. Like, it absolutely changed his life, his family's life, and the life of his employees. And none of that would have happened had he not taken this process seriously. So very good point.
Yeah, it's like taking your business to doc, you try to figure out really the actual situation where you're at. And sometimes, like you, Jack, mentioned, sometimes you find things that completely are not working. Like you work for free, almost for free. And your plan is to get more of these jobs almost for free, right? So you need to address completely different things. And this is what ultimately we try to do in our consultation. We try to understand and try to show you where is your business at. And also we educate you when it comes to marketing, because that's something that no matter what usually all the contractors think that it's not their thing, but you need to understand at least the base to run a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that reminds me of another time. This company, it was another landscaping company, actually. They hired me to basically do like audit their marketing situation. They were spending a few thousand a month on what was it? It was Home Advisor at the time, but it's Angie Leads now. But they're buying these leads, and they were experiencing what a lot of companies experience with Angie's Leads, where they're buying a whole bunch of leads, but they can only reach maybe 1 out of 5, and they have to buy a ton of leads in order to get any actual sales, any actual clients. And so they came in, they're like, this isn't working for us, we want to find something else. And as always, I said, okay, well, let's take a closer look at that and figure out exactly how bad it's working and how good you need it to work, so that we can make sure whatever we do moving forward is not only the right fit, but we know whether it's reaching your goals or not. So the very first part of that conversation was, let's just run the numbers on your home advisor leads and see what's going on. And we went through all that and discovered that they were getting like a 6-to-1 return on their home advisor leads, meaning if they bought $1,000 worth of leads, they made 6,000 like profit. And I was like, even though it doesn't feel like this is working, like this is working really well for you, you would be kind of crazy to stop. And they're like, oh, okay, thanks, bye. And I never heard from them again. So this was a company who, they were about to stop something that was working super good for them. And this is not an advertisement for Home Advisor Angie Leads by any means. 99% of the time it is not profitable from what I've seen. But this time it was, and we saved them a huge mistake for, a little bit of time. So definitely, like, this process is so important. And some people see the value. We've done a couple hundred of these consults and taking a deep look at businesses and helped our clients, get a different perspective on their business. And every time we do one, we get better at it. So at this point, like, it's such a great opportunity for the price that we charge to get somebody who has looked at hundreds of businesses, worked inside of hundreds of businesses, like knows what a business like yours needs to look like to grow. It's kind of a no-brainer to do that. Like, I spend a lot of money on doing the same exact thing. People who know what my business looks like when it's 10 times bigger, I get them to take a look and tell me, like, hey, what needs to change in order to keep progressing? And they can tell me because they see it all the time, but I don't get to see it all the time. So those things are out there. Those people are out there. And if you're a business owner, like, pretty much any situation, I definitely recommend finding somebody like that.
So regarding audits, could you tell me a little bit more into that what is it that you do in audits?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the same situation, or like the same process we took Lundy through 4 years ago, we turned that into its own product. We call it an audit and consultation. You can think of it as a marketing assessment, a business assessment. It's a 15-question worksheet. You fill that out, you schedule a video call with us, and then we get on and look through your answers. We do our own research. We look at your competitors. We measure how well your online presence is working for you in relation to your competition. We look at the answers you provide, specifically the numbers that you give us. And we just get an overall picture of, like, okay, compared to the, 150 successful company examples we've seen that are like this company, where are the gaps? What's the difference? And then we get on a call and spend an hour or so just going over everything, having a conversation, sharing what we've learned, and discussing, like, the goals and the plan for what it looks like to continue growing that company.
Yeah, what I'm seeing, and especially after the audit, is that people that get through it with you, Chuck, nobody's ever said, "Oh my God, this was a waste of time." I am also seeing usually extensive plans for a business that are having several stages, and we write it down, we record it because it's a lot of information usually, and people just need to take their time to also to execute everything that they got out of the audit, right?
Well, yeah, for sure. It's, for most people that I've gone through this process with, it's the first time they've ever had this kind of, like, one-on-one consulting, or just somebody who knows a lot about this stuff taking a look at their business and educating them on certain things, showing them the different options and avenues. It's super common for people to leave and then come back a year later and say, hey, I did like everything you said, and like it's worked really good, and now we're ready to actually hire your team to continue growing this. And so, and I always tell people, like, if anybody ever goes through the whole thing and does the call with me and they're like, this wasn't worth it, I want my money back, like, we just give them their money back. Like, but that's never happened. So
Yeah, that tells a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to audits, what I see a lot is that the people come in and I explain about audits, and they're like, well, I will need to pay for this consultation. But nobody ever thinks that otherwise you just experiment on your own money when it comes to marketing. You have basically you somehow try out Google ads, Google local service ads, not knowing what are you doing. It's a very common thing, especially with a Google ad where there's even no point to touch them if you're not ready to spend several thousand a month. And good marketer can figure out your ballpark of spending in your area. But people just try it out. They just set their budget and spend money to nowhere. And like after it's like, oh, I gotta spend $1,500 a month for several months, and it was not working. When it comes to audit, I think it's a well information, and that's a money that you can spend really well for your business.
Yeah, I think even worse than experimenting on your own money is like wasting time and delaying success. So like, just take Lundy for example. If he would have spent another year maybe trying a little bit of Google ads or dabbling in something, like he might have made a little progress, but more likely than not, he would have gotten nowhere, spent some money, and delayed all of that. Whereas doing it right the first time and acting quickly, it was from the point he made the decision, it was 6 weeks later that his entire business changed. And so that would have been, if he did 1.1, what is that, like $700,000? It would have actually cost him if he didn't take that action. So it's the opportunity cost that I see most of the time is the biggest loss. And it's hard to see that when you're, because you don't know. Hindsight's 2020, but I see so many business owners delay things. They're just afraid of making the wrong choice, so they don't make a decision. They don't do anything, or they'll like decide to cheap out and like dabble a little bit and this and that. And it's just too bad, because if they would just be decisive, take a bunch of action, and like get this ball rolling properly, then they would make 10 years of progress in 1 year. So that's the biggest, it's the biggest disappointment I see, is like we line everything up, like we show people the way, but the vast majority of people are afraid to make a decision, and their indecision ends up costing them a fortune.
It sucks when we see that from our side, because we get so like it's just disappointing, because like if you do X, Y, and Z, the company's gonna grow and they're gonna get X, Y, and Z result, but then the owner just decides not to do it, and it sucks. But it's their decision; they have to live with. So
that's life. You live with your choices.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dino, why don't you tell us a story just tell us a story, anything you want.
Yeah, so probably one of my favorite stories since I started working here, and it's one of the first clients that I've actually managed, since I've joined the ADS, because I've gone, from being a designer to writing the content for the website, but I haven't really been involved in the full process, and then I, was involved. So one of the first guys that I've talked to, he is a remodeler in Minneapolis, and I was super touched by his story. Actually, he is from a different place, but he saw a huge difference in Minneapolis in basement remodeling. So a lot of people have old basements that they need to be remodeled. So he decided to move away from his family into the Minneapolis, start a company, and get those type of projects. And it just wasn't working for him, unfortunately. Like, he had a website, but it was super terrible website. He just wasn't ranking. He wasn't seen online. he had a Google business profile, a profile on Google Maps, but he didn't have enough reviews, and basically competition was just killing him. And it was kind of sad to see that because he's an awesome guy. And then he signed up with us, and we basically did the same thing that we did for Lundy. Like, we built him a brand new website. We did the interviews with him. We did the search engine optimization. We optimized his profile on Google Maps, and then it took him some time to get results. It wasn't overnight like with Lundy because he was just in much more competitive area and being a newer company in that area as well. But after a few months, he started getting results. And like some months, he was even getting 30 leads a month, which for him was such a big deal. And there's actually a video of him on Chuck's YouTube channel. Chuck went to Minneapolis like maybe a year ago and did a video with him. You guys can watch that as well. But he got one project that he closed. It was like $220,000, which is something he never had before. And that's the project that came from the website. And now like his company is successful. Like, he's doing great projects. He has a bunch of guys working for him, has a nice office, trucks, all of these sorts of things. But it's same thing. Like, he has decided not to go with us or like, experiment on his own. Like, he wouldn't be where he is today. And that's the difference between business owners that put really a lot of thought in their business versus someone that's just winging it. Because if you just try to do it yourself, most likely it's not going to work. So that's one of my favorite stories of one of our clients that I've managed.
So as a contractor, if I like talk to you and I already have a website on a Wix that I made myself, it looks pretty well, but it's not bringing the leads in. And I talk to you and you say, well, we need to scrap it and build a new one. Why?
Yeah, so it's a lot like people building their own homes. You can build your own home, but you decide to hire a custom home builder to build you a nice property. So it's the same thing. And there's a big difference between the website that works and that doesn't. Like, everybody has a website nowadays. Like, whether they built it themselves, they hired someone to do it, or they hired a team. But everybody has a website. There's only a small percentage of websites that actually work. Like, even someone without any technical knowledge can go online nowadays and build themselves a website. But there's also a reason why there's companies like ours charging a lot of money to get that built, because there's certain things that go in that you learn with the years of experience. You can't just go there and build a website that's going to bring you all the leads you need. Again, same way as building the house. Like, you can't just one day decide you're going to build yourself a house and it's going to be super nice. Like, you can't do it, but it's probably going to suck. That's why you hire a builder. You don't build it yourself.
What specifically, Dino? Like, what's the difference between the websites you see that are built on Wix and the websites we build?
Yeah, so one of the biggest differences I see is the lack of information. Like, a lot of the times it's super hard to figure out like where that company is located. They have super vague headings. It's like they do remodeling in certain city, but their heading is like building houses that last, or like, making personal kitchens or just something like that. So the homeowner finding them, they go to their website and they're like, these guys do kitchens. They scroll down a lot, like, where are these guys even located? Like, I've seen their website looking in my area, like, for those search terms, but are they actually located here? And then like, it's super hard to find who they are. Like, you don't have any photos of the team, you don't have any photos of the previous projects. It's unclear how to reach out to them. So these sorts of things, it's just mostly lack of information and not being properly optimized. Because when people go to your website, like, they have certain questions, and if they can't figure out like who you are, what you do, and how you can help them, like, within the first 30 seconds, and if you're in their area, they're just going to go to some other website. They're not going to bother going across multiple pages just to figure out if you do kitchens in Minneapolis and to see some of your previous work. So those sorts of things is what I see a lot of people make mistakes when they are building their own websites.
And
Yeah,
then
listening to
Sorry.
you, like, I think about like that situation, because we see it all the time. It's like there's a lot of people who build their own website and then they come to us and they're like, well, what should I do? Like, everything I've done so far, is it working? Because what they want is they just want leads. They want customers coming in. And I've been in that situation before where I was building my own website and I hadn't done it before. And so what you do is you go online, you Google it. These days you maybe ask AI, you watch some YouTube videos, and like you just start doing it. You're like, oh, I'm going to go to Wix. It's easy. They say it's super easy. And you start and you're like, oh, well, I need a homepage. Google said I need a homepage. And oh, I should write blogs because blogs is how you get seen on the internet. And like they do all this stuff. And it's kind of like your example of somebody who's like remodeling their own home. Like they watch some YouTube videos, they maybe talk to some people, and they're like, all right, here's like my plan, whatever my plan might be. I'm just going to like learn as I go and figure this out. And so they go through and they do it. They make a ton of mistakes. It takes forever. They waste a bunch of materials. They finish it, but like certain things look funky or just aren't really that good. And some things aren't good and they don't even know it because they don't have the expertise.
Yeah.
And you just compare that with someone like me who's done hundreds of remodels. Like I go into a house and I just immediately can draw on all of the other remodels I've done to know exactly what I'm going to do. I know how everything is already put together, and like I can just see the thing to the end. I know exactly how to get there in the shortest amount of time. I know exactly how many materials I need. And it's the same thing with us. Like it's relatively easy to like build a website, but it isn't easy to build a website that's actually going to beat your competitors and bring in customers. If it was, like everybody would do it, and it wouldn't be easy anymore because everybody would be doing it. That's the nature of competition. Yeah. So in most markets, it is a competition. You have you're up against companies who have really good online presence. They've been doing this for a long time. They work with really smart people like us, and they're cruising. And you're coming in, you're like, I'm just going to build my own website, and I'm going to figure it out as I go because I don't want to spend any money on it. And you spend a ton of time, and then you get onto the playing field, and you're like in the bottom 10% of competitors. Like your competitors just, no one even sees you. Google doesn't even show you because there's 50 other companies in your area that are better. So that's just a situation that like people don't understand. Like it took me years of marketing to really get a clear idea of like how much of a competition this is. Like with SEO, you think like, oh, I just need to go do some SEO and make it as good as I can. And like that's the goal when you don't know what you're doing. When you do know what you're doing, you just look at your competitors and you're like, I just need to be better than them. So how good are they? And that determines like how good you need to be. You don't need to be the best. You don't have to have the best electrician website on the planet. It just needs to be better than the competitors in your area. So you start by looking at them, see what the heck they're doing. And so there's just a huge experience curve. It's the same with everything. I love that analogy of relating it to whatever that person is an expert in, because most business owners are an expert in their thing. So if they're an electrician, it's like, well, would you recommend a homeowner wiring their own house? Like they could probably watch YouTube and ask some questions and figure it out, but you probably wouldn't recommend that, right? So very good analogy.
Your house burns down.
Yeah,
but doing it, also like doing it yourself, it's like digging a hole, and you bring good old shovel and you start digging, but then the guy next door, he brings a big excavator and he's done in like 10 minutes and you're digging for like a week, so it's kind of the same thing of doing it yourself versus hiring someone that knows how to do it for you.
Yeah, no, that's another good analogy. It's like if you're digging a well, like you go in your backyard, you just start digging. But like, wouldn't it be smart to like figure out how deep your neighbor had to dig before you start, so you have an idea of how deep to go?
That's right.
Yeah, 100%. And then usually the end result is somebody comes in after 9 months. They have a website, a Google My Business account, are running Google local service ads, and nothing works. Nothing works.
Even though 9
the time
months.
is spent.
Yeah, even
Sorry?
though 9 months or like a few months doesn't seem like a big timeline, like in business it is. Like we started working with a power washing company recently, and they told us like if we don't get any leads within the next month, like we're out of business. And like imagine these guys trying to figure that themselves. It's like now they would be out of business, but they're not. Like they're doing better than ever, and that's because they've made the right decision and came to people that actually know what works and how to help them. So it's another example on why you shouldn't do it yourself.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
always
why don't
say
you
that.
flesh out the story of them really quick?
Yeah, so basically, power washing guys, super young, super ambitious, like they're doing awesome right now. And they did do great before, but then all of a sudden, everything stopped. Like they had a website, they were doing Google ads, they were doing local services ads, they were doing all of that, but then at one point it just stopped and they had no idea why. Like the company they were working with wasn't responding to them, like they got purchased by another company, so everything was just going downhill for these guys. And like they didn't have a luxury of having 6 months or a year to figure out what's going on. Like they needed leads pretty much today, because they don't get them. Power washing, like such a business dynamic, like if you don't get leads, like jobs are super fast, so you just need like new leads almost on a daily basis to keep your company existing in a way. So they came to us, Chuck talked to them, and then we basically got their local services ads re-optimized. That started working just right a few days after they signed up. We got their Google Ads live, like we created a new Google Ads account, landing pages, all of those sorts of things we do. And also that started working a few days after it got live. So now that those two things are working, also their SEO, we're doing the SEO, that's better than ever. So they're getting leads on basically all the fronts. They're getting found on Google, their business is getting found on Google Maps, their website is getting found, their local services ads, their Google ads, and they're just getting leads from all the sources. And they're doing awesome right now. Like since it's winter season for them, they're transitioning into other things like Christmas light installation, and they made a smart choice. They wanted to do Google ads for that, and we made that live, like I believe it was a week ago. And a few days have passed. I get a message from them, hey, we already got 2 great leads for Christmas light installation, keep going, we want more of those. So it's a pretty cool story. It's a story where we made changes real quick. It's not something that usually happens, but it happened in this case because they had the money to spend it and they had their stuff live. Like if they didn't have a website, they didn't have a profile on Google Maps, and they just needed leads today, it wouldn't be impossible, unfortunately. But they had reviews, they had the website, they had local services ads, everything was live. It just wasn't optimized properly. We go in, we do that, and their whole business changes in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, they were
So
perfectly poised to get super fast results because they already had it all set up. It just wasn't working.
And when you are in these projects, Dino, if you see some opportunity for some, let's say, other joint service, is that something you address? You have any examples of that where, you saw the opportunity and people started a service that they didn't have and it got really, really well?
Yeah, we see that all the time because like there are different ways you can show up on Google. Like we talked about that in the previous podcast. But if we see leads could be cheap, or the competition is not that great on certain part of Google, like we basically talk to client about that because we're thinking one step ahead of them. Like they might not even know local services ads exist, for example, or Google ads, or whatever it might be, but we do, and it's our duty as their marketing guys to basically tell them about the opportunities and how they can grow their business. Because if we don't, like we're failing at our jobs as well. And we've seen some great opportunities in that as well, especially with local services ads. Like people don't know what that is. We talk to them, we explain how it all works. They start and they get super cheap calls for that, like sometimes even for $20-$30 per call, which is like it's so cheap. Like I can't explain how cheap that is. Well, most people are paying like $200-$300 per call in competitive areas. So we've seen huge results with that in the recent months as well.
So the local service ads is something that works pretty well for location-based contractors, right? You have any example of somebody who's doing great with local service ads?
Yeah, so we can talk about the latest client that started doing local services ads with them. Like they do all sorts of things. They do windows, they do doors, they do siding, roofing, all sorts of projects. And their local services ads got live like 2 weeks ago. And I just talked to the guy yesterday, and he spent close to 2 grand on local services ads in 2 weeks. And he basically made like 13 grand revenue, and his profit was close to 7 grand. So he basically spent 2 grand and he made seven on local services ads in just 2 weeks. And it's just getting started. Like that's his first 2 weeks. Like he got basically 14 calls for that. Like if he closed two more, he could have made a lot more money. Next month is probably going to be better than this. So again, just getting started. But we've seen a lot of cases like that. Like the installation contractor we work with in Granada Hills, he spent basically $1,000 on local services ads. He got a project that was like 10 12 grand, but then he got a few referrals out of that project as well, which basically he didn't get charged for because it was referrals from that one job. So what I'm trying to say is like one job can change a lot of things in your company, because if you get one good job, you can get 10 referrals out of that to like repeat business that can kind of keep your company alive for some time if you're struggling as well, or help get you to the next level as well.
I think that's a good thought to end it. We got to get back to work, but we've worked with a lot of companies or business owners who they don't take every lead seriously. Sometimes they miss calls. It takes them forever to respond, or they don't respond to all their leads. And it's on the flip side. Like you were just telling that story of that guy spent $2,000, profited seven, or I forget what it was, profited five, whatever
Yep.
it was. And if he had closed two more jobs, like I would have doubled that or whatever. So like every lead counts. It's like when you close a couple jobs and it makes that big of a difference. If you just got one more, then it would have been a huge gain. And on the flip side, it's like we see people sometimes who they invest in marketing, they're getting leads, but then they don't take it seriously and they let some of the leads go. And you never know. You miss 2 out of 10 leads, and one of those might have been the biggest, best project that you've ever had, and somebody who would have referred you to a bunch of other clients or had you back to work at their home over and over. Like at Kyle Construction, we have clients who have been having us back to do more projects for over 20 years. We have clients who've spent millions of dollars with us over decades. Like imagine going back in time and like we just didn't return that call.
Yeah.
So it's like you just never know, but like that's why you should take every lead seriously and treat every lead like it could be the best client you've ever had, because it just might be.
Absolutely. Love that.
Cool. Well, let's get back to work, guys. This was a good one, and look forward to doing one next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Later.